to get into the room and get settled, and we'll get started. I'll cover this in my opening, but if you are in here now, if you switch to speaker view, you're going to have the best experience in the program today. That's up at the top if you click on view and switch to speaker. It's 10 a.m., so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. On behalf of the Johnson County Library and the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, I'd like to welcome you to our third online legislative coffee this year. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday morning. We really appreciate you being here. We think that involvement in our democracy begins with involvement in local and state politics. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to our legislators for taking time out of their Saturday mornings. We'd also love to invite you to our final legislative coffee on March 12th. I personally attend every single coffee and I learn something at every single one of them. I think you'll learn something even if your legislator isn't there. And then we'd also like to invite you to the League's 2022 annual meeting on restoring our faith in our democracy. The registration links will be in the chat for all of these. And then just a couple more bits of housekeeping and I'll stop talking. We recommend that you view today's program in speaker view, which you can select in the upper right-hand corner. All questions will be submitted via the form linked in the chat. That will ensure we're able to ask your questions. If you send them to me via chat, I may not see them. I'm doing other things. So I try to monitor them and get them in the form, but your best chance is submitting them in the form as the form of a question. If it's not a question, it makes it harder for us to know what you're actually trying to ask. And if you can, you can submit as many questions as you want, but try and submit them one at a time. That makes it easier for us also to ask them and make sure that we get them asked. And then you also have the contact information for all of the legislators attached to the email that I sent the Zoom link. So if your question doesn't get asked today or you want to follow up, we encourage you to do so. So we're going to begin with 3 minutes from each legislator with time to discuss their committee work or anything else they'd like to share. Senator Sykes said she was going to start first. So please start by introducing yourself, and our timekeeper is here to keep us all on track right there, Karen. And so let's go ahead and get started.
All right, thank you, Ashley. I'm Senator Dinah Sykes. I represent the 21st District, which is all of the city of Lenexa and Northwest Overland Park, kind of the downtown area. I also serve as the Senate Minority Leader. I am on ranking on redistricting, ranking on Senate Education, and I am the co-chair of Senate Oversight. Or confirmation oversight. This has been a crazy session. I know you hear that every time we talk about these. In my 6 years, I think this has been the craziest so far. Our only constitutional thing is to pass a budget. This year, we do have to draw new maps because of reapportionment. And it has been, I don't really know the right word, but we are on the path forward. Redistricting, we passed a congressional map. It has been challenged in court, so we're kind of waiting to see what happens there. I also serve on the LCC, and on last Wednesday we met, and it seemed like Republicans had kind of planned everything before we got in there. They have decided to hire outside counsel for the legislature to defend these maps. I don't know why, because time and time again, they said that these maps were constitutional, they were fair, they were going to pass muster. And then now we are spending, I don't know how much money from a Missouri law firm when we apparently don't even think that our attorney general can defend these. So that's kind of my little summary on redistricting. I think we will see some Senate and House maps when we get back. I know I have been working on a map that the Senate Democrats will be submitting, and we've been having conversations with Republican leadership trying to actually come together on a Senate map, but I have not seen theirs. So probably next week we will get to see those first versions of maps. I'm gonna, time goes by fast. Education, Senate education, we have all of the crazy bills that are in House education. I know Representative Ousley is gonna talk about those. We really haven't worked a lot of those. They've kind of been quiet, but all of those were blessed. So we're at turnaround. So right now, anything that doesn't pass one chamber is kind of dead unless it's been blessed or put in an exempt committee. So I'll let Jarrod share about those bills. And one bill that was really exciting for me, it's Senate Bill 192. This is a bill I have been working on since 2018. It's putting in a process how to take guns away if you're legally not supposed to have those. There will be a hearing in Senate Fed and State on Wednesday at 10:30. We have not had common sense gun bills hearings in the Senate in the last 6 years. So I'm looking forward to this, and hopefully we can make some progress. Thank you. Oh, that was fast.
Representative Featherston.
Hi, I'm Linda Featherston. I represent the 16th district. So that's mostly Overland Park, a little bit of Lenexa, 95th to 127th, Plum to 69 Highway. I serve on the local government, education, and agriculture committees. My committees have not been particularly active this year. So I'll tell you what I've been doing outside of committee. The number one thing I've been working on is House Bill 2620, which does have bipartisan sponsors. It increases protections for hospital workers by increasing the penalty of attacking a hospital worker and creating the offense of interfering with a hospital worker. So we sailed through committee with no opponent testimony. I fully anticipated we would hit the House floor this week, and then we did not. So I'm not sure why that didn't come to a vote, but it has been blessed, kind of in an odd way, but blessed is blessed. And so I am hopeful we will see it come to the House floor and then be able to send it over to the Senate. The other thing I've spent a lot of time on was a bill to help out people who live in benefit districts to be better informed of a benefit district. And that was a bill we were told was going to be blessed because we were going to do some serious work on it as a committee, but it's not on the blessed list. So I'm not sure what to say, but I hope Wednesday I'll have better clarity on that. The third thing I worked on was allowing nurse practitioners to sign DNRs, because, you know, in our assisted living, our senior centers, they're mainly served by nurse practitioners. They're the ones who work with the families the most. And it felt like families were being re-traumatized by having to talk to the nurse practitioner and then talk to the doctor again. And that bill died due to probably what the nurse practitioners would call political shenanigans. So that's disappointing because it was one good thing we could have done that would have really helped out a lot of families and reduced trauma, but there it is. So I guess I look forward to seeing what happens this week if my hospital bill moves forward and see what we can do in the second half.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Senator Sykes. My name is Jarrod Ousley. I represent District 24 in Northeast Johnson County. I serve on local government with Linda, so that was news to me. I learned something this morning. I didn't realize that bill had died. I also serve on K-12 budget, and I'm the ranking member on children and seniors. I wanted to talk this morning as much as I can about K-12 budget. There's been a lot going on there, not so much in House education, but all the policy and budget has come through the K-12 budget committee, and we have yet to hear the Department of Education's budget. But so far we've passed out 3 bills that contain a total of 7 bills. The chair likes to bundle things to make it easy to follow, right? And one of those bills was 2662, the Parents' Bill of Rights. I got my notes here from committee. There were 3 oral proponents: Kansas Policy Institute, Kansas Family Voice, both Kansas-based outfits, and outfit from Arizona, education policy from the Goldwater Institute. And there were over 15 oral opponents. These are folks that had traveled and filled up the committee room. They were not via WebEx, and over 50 written opponent testimonies. The chair chose to divide the time equally between opponents and proponents. So each proponent got 10 minutes to speak and each opponent got 2 minutes to speak. The Parents' Bill of Rights is probably one of the most controversial bills that we've heard, maybe next to 2550, which is the education savings account, which we also passed out, bundled with House Bill 2615, which 2615 was a pretty non-controversial bill. School course, or it's allowing for alternative course credit. School districts are already doing this. There was no need to make the bill, but the education savings account is the voucher system they're trying to bring to Kansas. And I did a little research upon geographic size and number of non-public accredited schools in school districts, in-house districts, wrote a Shawnee Mission Post article about it. I'm trying to get out in front of this because I've thought for a long time there's no reason for school choice to exist in Kansas, because there's no reason legislation should pass that siphons money out of our public school system, which is good for every student in the state of Kansas, to go to a few students in a few spots in Kansas. And of the 286 unified school districts in Kansas, 57 of them have an accredited non-public school, leaves 229 without, or 80% without an accredited non-public school. And of those 286 USDs, only 5% have an accredited non-public school of which you can get a diploma. By that, I mean, they've got a primary and a secondary school district. And just for example, real quick, there's 8 school districts with 3 non-public accredited schools, ranging in square mileage from 6 to 2,443. So I just want to bring that to everybody's attention, make sure people are watching their legislators and watching how they vote. Thank you all much.
Hello, good morning. My name is Representative Dinah Osman. I am from District 48. That is from, it's basically a rectangular area in Overland Park, from 119th Street to 151st Street, and then from Schweitzer to Metcalf. That's the approximate area that we're talking about here. And so this is my first term in the legislature. I got in a special election back in July, and so I just came in January, and it's been really exciting. I am on 4 committees: financial institutions and rural development, insurance and pensions, corrections and juvenile justice, and then everybody's favorite, elections. So the elections has been interesting in that we didn't meet for the first 3 weeks or so because the chair was out, which I kind of thought generally good, because my philosophy is no good bills can ever come out of the election committee. And there's a lot of really bad bills that are coming out. We managed to kill, it was it HB 2585, which is the advanced voting ballot. So right now you have 3 days. This bill would say at 7 p.m. on election day, if your mail-in ballots are not in, they do not count. So we managed to kill that in committee, which is wonderful, except that there's a sister bill in the Senate that's also working its way through. So, you know, it's a short-lived Pyrrhic victory, I suppose. The other things, so what else have I been working on? There have been 10 bills that I've, or 10 bills and resolutions that I've sponsored or co-sponsored. And the 2 primary ones have been on civil asset forfeiture. And if you're not aware of that, I can talk your ear off on that for a really long time. But basically, it's for those matters that if you are suspected of running drugs, you can they can take your funds from you. You don't have to be charged. You don't have to be convicted of anything. They just take your funds. So that particular bill got a hearing and got a lot of press on it. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's been killed because it hasn't actually gotten final action. It's not been blessed, but I'm committed to bringing it back in 2023. The second one is a resolution. It is, with 30 seconds left, it's a anti-Semitism resolution. And this had bipartisan support. We managed to get 90% of the legislators in the House to co-sponsor this. And then when it went before the House committee or the House floor today or this week, 121 House members all voted for it. So it was unanimous. I'm excited. It's flipping over to the Senate, and that's my time. Thank you.
Right. Our first audience question of the day: what is the reality of eliminating the sales tax on food?
And I'll start. This is one of our priorities in the Senate for the Democrats. I introduced the bill. We had a bill that moved out of Senate tax. I do not support this bill, but it's amendable. It increased all of the sales tax on food, so even restaurants. It also had a provision in the bill that got out of committee for reduction or elimination on utilities, and it's like a $900 million fiscal note. A lot of Republican leadership is saying because of Apex, we no longer can afford sales tax on food reduction. That is not true. We've looked at the numbers. It's $450 million a year, and we owe it to Kansans to pass this and do it sooner so that our grocery stores can make that change.
I've not even heard of a hearing in the House, so I think this might be something the Senate's taking a lead on.
All right. What do you think Kansas should do with its unexpected budget surplus?
I think we should axe the food sales tax. That's the number one thing I hear about door to door. I think we should look at things that help real people, like funding education fully. That helps everybody, whether you have kids in schools or not. It keeps your property values high. It keeps our workforce ready to go. I think we should look at better funding special education throughout Kansas. Those kids deserve to be fully funded. And again, it's for the betterment of society that we do it. I think we also fully funding capers. Those are great things. And my nerdy side, I was super excited in the governor's budget to see paying off of debt, because that just helps us for generations to come. And I was writing my newsletter and updating about the budget and oh my gosh, if we pay this off, we're going to save this much money. And my husband thought I had really gone over the financial prudency edge that day. But it's so exciting how much money we could save in the future by paying off the debts we have now.
I agree. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't have my numbers in front of me directly, but I think the State Board of Education put out a plan to bring us to our 92% obligatory statutory obligation for special ed excess funding. And I think it's $86 million a year for a 5-year stretch to bring us to that. So it's big money. And the administrators and supers that I've talked to say that's the biggest bang for the buck that we could help out our school districts in. So I would agree with Linda on that.
Yeah,
sorry.
I would. No problem. I would also go sales tax on food, groceries, a number one priority. In the Senate this week, we passed 2 bills. One was paying off that capers layering that was because we were financially strapped, and that's a good use. We also paying off some extra bonds. I think it saves us $171 million. So these are good one-time investments that we're not going to cause a cliff. Also, we need to make sure that we have a rainy day fund, because things are looking really good right now, but we have to make sure that when things are tight, that we're prepared for that.
Yeah. So I agree with everything that all the previous speakers have said. Particularly so, as the food tax, absolutely fully funding the education formula. We need to do that. There's a bill going through the House right now about $1 billion getting invested back into capers. It's been blessed, which means that it didn't get killed over this last turnaround. We're going to be discussing it at some point. I think it's in appropriations right now. It is the chair of Insurance and Pensions, Stephen Johnson, is the person that brought it forward. And generally, I'm in support of it, but $1 billion is $1 billion, and we really need to look into, just where our priorities need to be. I fully believe that we need to support capers, but it's just a question of how much, when, and where. I would say, in a more holistic sense, the fact that we have a budget surplus right now is fantastic, and we just need to look at getting individuals in office that support having a budget surplus rather than going into the red again and again and again. So we need people in place that are fiscally responsible so that we have all of these options that we do this year, every year going forward.
Representative Ousley, you mentioned a voucher bill. Could you give us the number on it? Somebody was asking for clarification on that.
So 2550 was the voucher bill number, and it got bundled in with 2615. And that all those bills that came out of K-12 budget have passed out of budget and since been blessed. So they're all still alive.
Our next question, where does Medicaid expansion stand right now in the legislation?
I think last week, both the House and the Senate, we introduced Medicaid expansion bills trying to keep that conversation forefront, but honestly, the votes are not there. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is, trying to get grassroots. We know that over 75% of Kansans support Medicaid expansion, but elections matter and they have consequences. And right now we do not have the votes. So a lot of the things that we're trying to do is, chipping away at some of those things and making sure that one of those, it's not Medicaid expansion, but like our CHIP date is from 2008, poverty level from 2008. So can we update things like this? And that's kind of what we're taking now, but still a conversation. We try to have that, but honestly, we do not have the votes currently.
I'd agree with the senator on that. However, in appropriations, I know last week they did take a vote on an amendment that would have put it out of committee, and it failed. I think it had one Republican support it, so the votes aren't there.
Also, when Jarrod said that, the governor's budget has Medicaid expansion in there. And just so that the public knows, by us not expanding, it cost our state $68 million because of what we will not receive because of some of those enhancements from the federal government. So it's not going to cost it, it's costing us not to expand.
Yeah. So I agree. It's unfortunate that we don't have the votes. I have a friend that's David Schliffsky. He's an economist and a professor at KU. And he, along with his team, did a very thorough analysis of states that expanded Medicaid in 2016 versus those that did not, including Kansas. What was surprising to them is that it didn't just hurt the Kansans that are in that gap that could have expanded Medicaid. It hurt everybody across the board for multiple variations of where we are in the economy, for multiple healthcare outcomes. It was just phenomenal how the states that expanded Medicaid, their chart went like this, and Kansas sort of just went like this. And I want to show all of those graphs to everybody that doesn't want to expand Medicaid and show just how hard we are screwing over Kansas by not expanding Medicaid.
Yeah, and I'll throw in, expand Medicaid is expanding it to working Kansans. So in Kansas, if you have a family of 3 and you make $8,000 a year, you are too rich to get help with your health insurance. So you go ahead and calculate your bills and see if you can even live for $8,000 a year, let alone have a health issue. Also, when people without insurance have a health issue, they generally sit on it till it becomes a bigger and bigger issue. And then they end up in the emergency room because the emergency room must see everybody regardless of ability to pay, which I think is a good thing. And there's a good reason for those laws. But by this point, you are in the least efficient way to treat something that could have been handled like in a primary care setting in a preventive manner. Now something has become an emergency and they're in the emergency room, which again, you are paying for that with your tax dollars. So if that's how you care to spend your tax dollars, by funding inefficient, highly expensive healthcare, then that's what we've chosen as Kansas voters. But if you would like to spend your Kansas dollars more wisely by funding preventive care and by letting people who are working have access to healthcare, then we need to do something about that in November.
What is the status of the bill that might exempt school children from any vaccine?
This was a bill in the Senate. I don't know where it is in the House, but this is the alleged bill that got our congressional map. That it was, the veto was overridden. It got sent back to committee. I am honestly not sure if that was blessed or not, but I know that the person or the persons who care about this will find any opportunity to try to amend it on any bill that comes forward, whether or not it was blessed or not. And we looked at study after study, and Kansans, we support vaccines overall, and we have eliminated a lot of childhood diseases. And this is really scary that we have a couple of people who do not trust science or medicine and pushing this agenda.
That's one bill that hasn't come through K-12. I believe in the 2662, the Parents' Bill of Rights, it touched on vaccines, but nothing like what the Senate's hearing. I don't think it's anything more than already exists in the 2662.
I will say we had a bill from last year in House Education. It would have expanded vision screenings and also allowed school nurses to stock albuterol or inhalers in addition to EpiPens. And we did a lot of really good work on that bill last year. We pulled it back out of committee. It was headed to the floor and it got pulled for fear that it would be amended to be an anti-vax bill. So then it got changed back to just vision screenings. And I really can't remember if it got blessed or not. But at this point, we have to watch every bill that comes through with any reference to vaccines for fear of an amendment putting on that would strip like all childhood vaccines. So, this isn't a COVID thing. This is a like polio, measles, mumps, rubella, all those things. So we really need to be alert to what's out there.
This was my fear with the special session, that what we discussed in the special session was about just the COVID-19 vaccine, but it set a precedent and it opened the door for a discussion on all vaccines everywhere and whether you need to take it or not. And we're going to see widespread ramifications because of the vote that was taken in special session and multiple bills that are going to come out, not just this year, but every year after this.
A clarification question. Could one of you define blessed?
Yeah, so a bill has to go through an exempt committee, which on the Senate is Tax, Ways and Means, or Fed and State. And on the House, it's Appropriations, Fed and State, or Tax. And so those are available to be discussed at any time. If it goes in another committee, the speaker or the president can bless a bill. So basically they refer it to an exempt committee so that it is still alive and can be worked, have hearings or worked. Others have just died for the session. And even though they have died, they can still be in an amended version. So nothing really ever dies, but it just makes it harder to move them.
And just to elaborate on that, a snitch, Thursday was turnaround day. I believe that was touched on earlier, and that just means if it originated in the Senate chamber, it's got to be to the House, by this legislative deadline or vice versa. And so blessed means it stays alive after that turnaround day.
What is the difference between an email to your representatives or committee members compared to submitting official testimony? When should constituents use the different methods?
So emails are not public record, and the testimony is. So when you submit testimony, you're submitting that as part of the record of opposition or neutral or proponent, whereas an email is just a request to your representative or letting your representative know how you feel. Testimony is, in my opinion, more powerful. I was asked by an educator if emails work, and of course emails work. I like to refer back to them, but when you have over 50 opponents to a bill that only has 6 proponents, it's telling of the will of the people versus the will of the committee.
I would agree with that.
I'm concerned about domestic violence in Kansas and recently learned that access to a firearm makes it 5 times more likely that a woman will die at the hands of her abuser. This intimate partner violence disproportionately affects Native American, Black, and Latinx families in Kansas. What can we do legislatively to keep our families and our communities safer from domestic violence?
Well, first I would say if you can testify to the bill that's in Senate Fed and State 192 on Wednesday, that would be a great step. So there's a lot of bills we've been dealing with on domestic violence, and they're really kind of non-controversial, but anything that causes, we have a bill in the Senate that clergy would be mandatory reporters. And actually there was a bill earlier this session that rape kits, we have a backlog and trying to get those processed. It was actually pulled from the Senate. I mean, it was on our general orders, but it was passed over because they heard that there was an amendment to amend that who would be a mandatory reporter. And so we passed over that bill. Actually died. It was a great bill. It passed out of the House, I think like 125 to 0 or whatever. So, demand that we discuss these issues. They're complicated. They make us uncomfortable. But if we truly want to protect Kansas, we're not going to shy away from having hard conversations. And that's what's happening time and time again. Senator Holscher had another amendment on a bill for, the word's escaping me. So that if you were a victim as a child, that statute of limitations when you can charge someone is really decreased. So trying to expand that, because a lot of people, it happens earlier and then by the time they're 21, they may at this time be willing to have that conversation, but they're not allowed to. So there's a lot of bills that we have that we need to discuss to how do we protect victims of domestic violence. Gun bills are some of those, but the appetite of anything from the other side of the aisle is if it's controversial or it makes me uneasy, I just don't want to have this conversation. So if those are things that you're passionate about, which we all should be passionate about those, go to the Capitol, demand hearings, demand that we have these conversations, because we're just kind of hiding these in a back door and not being open about them.
I would also say along the lines of testifying and submitting testimony, you as a citizen are qualified to submit testimony. You are qualified to testify. If coming in person is a burden. I know all of my committees are accepting virtual testimony, and I think that could really help expand the voice of the people. We, as legislators, are very used to seeing people appear virtually now. So get on that list to testify. This also reminds me, I did have a fourth bill, which was to extend protection orders. Right now, you can get a protection order for a year or two. I was going to move forward to make that 2 to 5 years. You know, every time a victim is confronted by their abuser, that's an opportunity for more violence. I was told by the chair that they would ask that be a blessed bill, and I take their word for it that they did that. That bill was not blessed, and I'm not sure what's controversial about protecting mostly women, but anybody from their abuser, from protecting their children from that abuser, but something in there made it not important enough to be blessed and carried on. So I will be looking to see anywhere I can put that later. I mean, we had support from domestic groups, we had support from law enforcement. It's dangerous for law enforcement to be involved in serving these orders, in, you know, going after people who are violating them. We need to protect law enforcement by extending these orders, and we need to protect parents from abusers.
And just to piggyback on what the representative said, I see some members of Moms Demand in the gallery, and that organization, plus we've got the Metropolitan Organization Countering Sexual Assault. If you get involved with an organization like that, they can help you figure out how to get involved and make your voice heard.
Is any work being done to improve services or funding for mental health needs?
You know, they talk about mental health a lot in the State House, but I've not heard of them funding it to session. Not to say that they're not, but it's not been brought up in any of my committees. So if it's been something, I don't recall seeing it on the floor in the chamber.
I would agree with that. And going back to Medicaid expansion, I mean, that is one of the best things that we could do for mental health. I know Johnson County alone, I think we spend $7 million of uncompensated care, and half of that would be reimbursed. So $3.5 million to $4 million. Like, what could we do in our community if we were not having to like fund that from ourselves? So last year we made some progress in some of those things, but honestly, the biggest thing we could do is Medicaid expansion, and they do not even see how that affects that. Even our schools, social workers, when they talk about Medicaid expansion and how it would help in our schools and even helping families, they get upset and they were like, I'm never going to let you testify in this committee again, which is absurd.
Not related to funding, but 2513 involved the communities care survey out of K-12, and Johnson County mental health opposed this bill because it restricted, you know, who could administer the survey and under what guidelines they could administer it. And that is a valuable survey to Johnson County mental health specifically. And the committee passed it out favorably. As the committee discusses the mental health of our children, they go against the mental health experts. Doesn't even relate to funding. Wasn't even asking for money, just policy. So
I think this question and the previous question kind of go hand in hand. The question of gun violence and mental health seem to be taboo subjects that don't get a lot of play and passage in bills, but they do go hand in hand, and they are both important. And it is a shame that we can't get something going on a legislative level to address either of those two things. What I would say is, just this week, you know, Jarrod just talked about Moms Demand Action. They had an event at the Capitol. They also had virtual events, one of them that I attended. And then there's also the mental health portion, which I think came in a number of people from various mental health organizations, suicide preventions came in, I believe, on Tuesday in the Capitol. And I think part of our job as legislators is to understand what's happening at various levels, even if it's not necessarily under our purview. What's happening at the Johnson County level? What's happening at the Overland Park level, if you happen to be a legislator there? And what we can all do to work together, because it's not going to take one individual level that solves these issues, especially mental health. It's going to be every level working in conjunction with each other.
Can I take this opportunity to talk about House Bill 2222? I think I originally introduced it in 2018. The concept of the bill is to allow an individual to forfeit their right to purchase a firearm if they're suffering about depression or having suicide ideations. And like I say, it's been 4 years, and I think there's been a couple of rewrites of the bill. 3 other states have since passed the bill, and I believe I'm ready for a hearing. I've got mental health directors, I've got suicide prevention experts that'll come and testify. I've got veterans groups that are ready to come testify. But when we talk about any bill that has to do anything with guns, and this is not the possession of a gun, this is merely the purchase of a gun, the NRA is a very powerful lobbying force in the Kansas State House. And I believe I've got them to where they will be a neutral. They wanted me to take it away. So if you tell the KBI you want to be put on the NICS list for no buy, originally the bill had a 21-day time limit that you couldn't rescind that purchasing power for 21 days. And the NRA wanted me to bring that down to 72 hours. And after talking with mental health crisis intervention folks, everybody says that cool off period, 15 minutes can make a life-saving difference, and 72 hours, everybody agreed was pretty adequate. So I believe that we're about ready for a bill on that. And I'll take that as a tremendous success, like the senator was saying, just to get a hearing on it. It's been 4 years in the works, and I'm really hoping that when we get back, we get that hearing. And it is a House bill that was introduced in Fed and State, so it is exempt from the deadlines. So there's my plug.
How can Spark money be used to support individuals with disabilities?
So I serve on one of those Spark committees, and last Wednesday, I think, was the deadline. We had grant applications that everyone submitted. I serve on the health and education one. And I think we have 75 submissions that we are kind of digging into now. But I think it's like Spark money is one-time money. So that's what we have to look at. How do we update facilities, put in the procedures that we need, but we don't want to use that money for something that we're going to have to continue to pay year after year after year, because it's not going to be there. So I think it's the best way is how do we free up some of that flexibility so that we can really use one-time funds, either setting forth the framework moving forward, or dealing with facilities. But not necessarily something that we want that's going to be an accruing cost every year.
What do you think of House Bill 2686, which would establish the Kansas Department of Water and Environment to tackle water usage in Kansas?
I'm not familiar with it, but I think that's a good idea on the surface. I don't serve on the water committee, but I know they've been doing a lot of work, and I was elected in 2014. And at that time we had a committee in the House called Vision 2020, and it was supposed to look forward 20 years. And water was one of those topics that was discussed often, but never funded. And I know in the governor's budget, we have funding in the water plan this year. So I'd like to see legislators start taking that serious.
I just looked it up. It is a 283-page bill, so I cannot pretend that I've even started to read this one. It has gone through water, and what I can tell you, though, is that I realize that it's probably not in water. It's most likely in appropriations if it's been blessed, but there are a lot of very committed people on the water committee. wanting to do what's best for Kansas. So I'm certain that if this looks like it did get a hearing on February 17th, we'd have to see where it went from there. But I think that those that have looked at this more closely would be able to make the best decision in terms of where to go with this.
And I'm just going to throw out Representative Vaughn and Representative Stogsdill are two Johnson County members on that committee.
And both of them attended or are attending a coffee, so you have their contact information if anyone's interested in following up with them. With 3 young kids, including a kindergartner, I am very worried about the reports of teachers and administrators leaving the field of education in big numbers. What can I, as a parent, do to help ensure that there is a steady supply of well-supported teachers in the years to come?
So I'm a parent of a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler at this time. And I mean, thank a teacher, of the 200 emails in opposition of the 2550, the voucher bill, over 50 identified themselves as teachers, either current or past. And it is alarming. I think we've lost more superintendents at midterm of the school year than we typically lose at the end of a school year. I want to say it's an increase of like 60%. So it's not just in the classroom, it's across the board. I will mention that, the debacle with our commissioner, our education commissioner last week probably didn't help anything, but I'm going to say that, I think the state board handled it professionally, and I hope that does help bring a positive impact to our entire education system. The other thing too is, elections have consequences. So, see how your legislator is voting, and do they really support teachers, or do they say they support teachers? When we were having the debate on the Parents' Bill of Rights, we decided that, it's the right of a parent to have the best educator in the classroom that we can. And due process is going to help ensure that educator can focus upon educating and not, being wrongfully terminated or having to negotiate due process. Prior to 2014, it was a statewide umbrella. They didn't have to negotiate with their districts for it. So we put that up as an amendment, and the committee, voted it down. Shocking. But, pay attention to things like that, not just a lip service, but look at how they're voting. See where the education advocates stood and where your legislator voted.
I would agree with that. And first and foremost, thank our teachers. 2 years ago at the beginning of COVID, they were our heroes, and now the legislature is attacking them right and left. We had the hearing on the Parents' Bill of Rights, and I was hearing, I was like demanding that people who were the proponents of this bill, I said, show me an example of how this is a problem in Kansas. And the guy from Arizona Goldwater was like, well, in Rhode Island. I'm like, I don't care about Rhode Island. I'm Kansas, and I can pull up right here on my phone everything that my son is doing in his Kansas public school. So I don't think this is a problem. And I think a lot of the people who are parents who do not talk to their kids. They're not involved, or they want a very limited and sheltered view. Kansas public schools are supposed to prepare our kids for the future and for our workforce. And you look at what is happening in our businesses. They're doing diversity training. They're doing equity. It's a must-have for our future. So again, look at those legislators. Are they stuck from a century ago and that's how they want to live life? Or are they willing to listen to our youth and what they want to hear and what they want to learn? We do not need to shelter our kids. We can have hard conversations. This is part of growing up, and it's part of learning. And, I will stand with our teachers. They're doing a great job, and they have become the villains from some of our colleagues. And I find it atrocious.
Yeah, we had a good session. The Johnson County delegation heard from teachers a few weeks ago, and they just kept saying over and over, just let us do our jobs. Let us teach. And that says a lot. Just let them do their jobs. And when you hear people attacking them doing their jobs, confront those people. Like, did you see that in your classroom? Have you looked at your child's in Shawnee Mission? We have Skyward. Have you looked at Skyward? Because I know my kids have now graduated and one is a teacher, but Skyward was very new when they were in high school, but I could see everything that was assigned. I could reach my kids' teachers by phone or email at any time. I always heard back from them, even before we had, internet access to what was going on with my kids. Like when my kids were in grade school, I was up at the school shelving books in the library. And boy, you can learn a lot by being up at school, helping out. And I never had a teacher turn down an opportunity for me to be in the classroom, to be active, like go to a school party, help out, and you can see what's going on. I've never been confronted with a teacher that didn't want to tell me that was going on. I had a kid bring home a book in grade school that was on her reading level, but not on her maturity level. I, as a parent, took that opportunity to be a parent, and we walked back to the library and we said, this is not appropriate for her maturity level. And I trust parents to know what is appropriate for those kids in those optional materials and to be involved in their children's lives. If you don't want your child to have a whole world view, then you need to talk with their public school teacher about things that might be out of bounds, or you need to consider a different schooling option might suit you better. And that is certainly every parent's choice to choose how they want to educate their child, whether public, private, parochial, or home. Parents do have the ability to make those choices, but within the public schools, I just have never had a problem finding out what was going on, again, even before I had internet access to every last thing they did in school.
So I agree with everything that's been said already before. From a local perspective, look at thanking your teachers, pay attention to what's going on with your kids at school, what's going on inside of your school district. From a larger perspective, there are 3 different levels. There is the State Board of Education, there's the legislature, and then there's the local board of elections or local school board. And all of them have a role to play in what goes on in your school district. And all of them have a role to play in what happens in your child's classroom. And it's kind of like whack-a-mole. The moment that you take your eye off of what's going on, a person pops into position that you don't really agree with, and they are not going to do with the best thing that for you, for the school, for your child. And it's it's a constant struggle, but we just need to pay attention to what's going on in local elections to make sure that the people that are getting into office are the ones that are going to support public education.
I also want to add, sorry, I know we've talked about this a lot. Social and emotional learning is one of those things that is being attacked right now. And I have had so many parents reach out to me and say, I am glad that the school is helping my kid deal with social and emotional issues. I wish I had had that when I was in school, because first of all, I wouldn't be having to pay a counselor now because I would have learned some coping skills. But if there are things that you are grateful for in your school, share that with your legislators, because a lot of those things that I appreciate, I know I was so grateful that when we moved to Olathe schools from Shawnee Mission, that my kids had a social worker that they could talk to about transitioning to a new school in the mid-year. So if there are things that you love or you just appreciate, let your teachers know, let your school boards know, let your legislators know.
And I still see a few moms there, Moms Demand. And Joella Hoy, Representative Hoy, serves on K-12 budget with me. And, she brought out minutes from a PTA meeting from 2 years ago when they started talking about DE&I training for faculty at SMSD, where a representative from the district showed up to their PTA meeting and explained what they were going to start embarking on, asked for feedback, asked for input, And I was so proud of a representative to be able to go back and dig up her meetings from her minutes. So I'll just put in one more tag, join the PTA.
How will you support capers?
I just voted to get rid of that layering and pay it. We have made multiple payments trying to get us up. And I think we are close. I think we're at 78% of like fully finished. I don't know. Anyway, we have made such strides. So don't believe the rhetoric that it's, you know, there are things we should do like COLA and things like that, but we are in a much better place today than we were 6 years ago.
So I'm on the Insurance and Pensions Committee, and the vast majority of capers comes through this committee. And I'll tell you that the chair, Stephen Johnson, is a really strong proponent of capers. And so a lot of the bills that are coming through there involve capers in some manner. And so we have the large bill about the $1 billion being added to capers, but there's also small things, little things in terms of like who can get capers, or whether you can transfer from we had a bill come through in terms of having police officers that worked outside of the capers fund that can transfer into it and keep their benefits and keep their retirement progress. We've had a lot of small little incremental bills that help specific groups of people, but build upon each other and allow everybody to benefit from capers. So, you know, honestly, I think we've done a lot of good just this session in allowing more people access to capers and allowing more funding to get involved, to be put into capers.
I think we have time for one last question. Do you support the passage of the Value Them Both constitutional amendment that will give you as legislators the ability to protect women and the unborn?
No.
No, this is like such a convoluted thing, and it is actually, if you look, we have stopped very bad bills because of our Constitution saying that a woman has a right, and bills where legislators have wanted to ban birth control. Those will be possibility things that could pass, and you won't have a right to your choices if this passes.
I voted against the constitutional amendment, and I would like to point out there was an amendment offered to provide exceptions for the life of the mother and in the case of rape, and that amendment was rejected largely on party lines. So I'm not sure how we're valuing women when we are not protecting their life if their life is in danger. And I certainly welcome every pregnant person to contact their higher power and pray for a miracle or whatever they think would protect them. And if they want to try carrying that child all the way, that is great. If your 10-year-old is raped and becomes pregnant and you as a family make the decision they can carry that child, that is certainly your right as a family. But I, as a legislator, have no business in that medical decision, but that should be between you, your family, and your physician. And you do not need 100+ people in your medical decisions.
I wasn't around during the time. I'm sorry, I wasn't around to vote on this, but no, I don't support it for all the reasons that have been expressed so far. I also want to point out something else. We just this week debated on the floor House Bill 2525. This is a bill to allow those that work, I think, less than 20 hours a week, access to food and childcare assistance, And even if they're not necessarily keeping up with various payments that occur. And it was shot down. It was shot down in committee of the whole before we even got to vote on it on the floor of the House. And the rationales that were given for those that voted against it were that these are deadbeat parents. These are parents that aren't fulfilling their obligation. They're not worthy to get the child care assistance or the food subsistence. And it's hurting the kids. And the only thing that I could think is all of these people that voted against this bill also voted for value them both. So you agree that life is sacred up until the point that you give birth to somebody, and then you're on your own and nobody needs to help you whatsoever. And we're going to call you a deadbeat if you so much as ask for anything. And I think that is so backwards of thinking. If you value life, show it in your actions by valuing life all through life.
I'd like to go back. That original question said so that you can regulate. We currently have the legal authority to regulate any medical facility. So this amendment does not do that. This amendment is going to take away your rights. But that's my 2 cents.
Furthermore, the amendments on the primary ballot, we offered amendments to put it on the general ballot where more of the population would be in the polls. It's political theater with people's lives, with 50% of the population's lives. And the first time I was asked to make a decision upon an abortion vote, I looked around the chamber. We've got 125 members in the House chamber. I looked at the roster and there were 97 men. And I decided at that point in time, this was not the body to be making decisions for a person that is pregnant, and I hope everybody does get out and vote in the primary election coming up. So.
We are at time, and as always, we were not able to get to every question. If we did not get to your question, I encourage you to follow up, do your civic duty, and reach out. Thank you again for attending. As a reminder, we do invite every single legislator with constituents in Johnson County to attend these. Hopefully next year we'll be able to be in person. And thank you for attending. If you'd like to attend on March 12th, that's our final one, and we have some legislators slated there. Again, you will still learn something even if your particular legislator is not there. Thank you. And thank you to our legislators. Enjoy your Saturday.